Hey man, I love being a farmer in Mesopotamia. Oh dude, totally. Nothing better. Nothing. Honestly, if you came to me tomorrow and said there was something better, yeah, I wouldn't believe you. Like, I'm staying right here. Oh, I get you. I get you. Farming my grain. Oh, same here. Not that I don't trust you or anything. No, of course, man, I understand. But you know what would make this farming a little better? What, dude? Because I'm gonna be honest, I don't see any way to improve this. Oh, I know, man, it's so great, but what if, yeah, man, we were just totally off our nut? In what respect? Just slammed the entire time. Just really hard to do anything well, but you think you're doing it great. Okay, I'm listening and interested. Also, sometimes you just vomit. Okay? Still interested? Beer was brewed back in 4000 BC in Mesopotamia. You got Nuzzy, Hatra, Babylon. That's where you guys are from, babies. You gonna cry, little Babylon babies? Yeah, you little big baby? Where? Where, little Babylon babies? Where? Babies. Drinking beer at some points in history was safer than drinking water because of all those tiny invisible death spots. They're everywhere, on your clothes, on your hands, in your eyes. They're in the air, in our lungs. An army of invisible soldiers ready to kill us all. God, it's in the bread. Oh, God, it's in the cheese.
Oh, oh, oh. Quel beau morceau de fromage.
It's even in the water. When your food can go bad and your water can kill you, how are you supposed to survive? Mix them together, heat them up, and see what happens. Beer, and alcohol in general, is one of the only reasons our civilization managed to make it to this height at this point in time. So why would you ban it? Alcohol plays a fairly big part in my life. I don't actually drink it often, just in large quantities. It's important to world history too, and not just because it seems like every decision made by world leaders is while they're drunk. In 1830, America had finally reached that big boy age and started drinking. A lot. The average American drank 1.7 bottles of liquor a week. The average American, there were like 10 million adults in America in 1830. How much booze were we making? That's insane. I don't want to say America had a drinking problem, but 1.7 bottles is almost as much as a Scottish teenager drinks. Also, yeah, 10 million American adults. I know if you Google it, it says 12 million Americans, but I did the maths and deducted children, so suck it, I put the minimum amount of effort in here. After the American Civil War, the Temperance Movement really took off, a movement combining progressives, social moralists, and hardcore religion, which I mean really cancels out the first two. The Temperance Movement aims to reduce or remove alcohol from public consumption, as they believe it spits in the face of God, which isn't great, I imagine, loses $6 billion in revenue because of the lack of productivity from labourers on Monday after they come in with a hangover. This was from an economics professor, Irving Fisher, who published several papers on the effect of Blue Monday. His research has since been discredited as he did uncontrolled experiments and was clearly biased. But you know America. Discredited research? That sounds like something I should believe in. They also believed alcohol was the reason husbands beat their wives, and not just because they were abusive, so okay. After that time, we dug a new river between France and Germany, also known as 4 years of trench warfare. America limited alcohol to 1.32%, which would just be considered water in England. This was to conserve grain so there was no shortfall after the war. The Temperance Movement then went, okay guys, this is great, so good, but what if we just went all the way? Just really knocked it straight out. I'm loving the 1.32%. What if we took away another 1.32% and just rounded that up to zero? BAM! 18th Amendment. 1920, America went into Prohibition. No drinky for you. Of course, every American followed the rules to the letter and never drank a single drop of alcohol. There was a black market from day one. I mean, it's their fault. People wouldn't be committing crimes all the time if crime just wasn't so fun. Booze entered from Canada and Mexico and from the water. This inadvertently brought back some very exciting people. Literal pirates. I'm not talking about no downloading a purse pirates. I mean they board ship, kill the crew, and take the booze type of pirates. That's pretty much all they did. There's so many weird and fascinating stories about the Rum Row, which was the international borderline for American waters. These huge ships would line up at the border and hang huge billboards on the boat facing towards America, stating the content and the price of the alcohol, screaming into a country where it was illegal to buy booze. Hey, wanna buy booze? These ships, which came from the Caribbean selling rum, Britain selling whiskey and gin, and France selling wine and brandy, had estimates of $800,000 of alcohol on each ship, sitting anchored in international waters with limited to no defensive capabilities, and a loot that a country only 12 kilometers east was willing and begging to fence for them. Boats were often found adrift in the water, completely stripped down with no crew because they were dead. This didn't just happen in the Atlantic. The Great Lakes had several gangs just as violent. The Detroit River had a gang called the Purple Gang, which would regularly hijack other rum runner boats because there's no honour. The larger boats would start attaching machine guns onto them in order to fend off other rum runners. They would not fend off the Coast Guard because fighting a couple of bandits in a speedboat is a lot easier than fending off America. Remember, this is the 1920s America too, back when it was actually unusual for Americans to own their own machine gun. When I say willing to fence alcohol, I mean willing to fence alcohol. Speakeasies are hidden bars. The entrances would be disguised, and some would run out of people's homes. You can still find speakeasy today, but they will be fully licensed and most will publicly advertise themselves. In New York City, there were between 30,000 and 100,000 speakeasies in 1925. 30,000 to 100,000. Not the state of New York. The city alone. 30,000 would have surprised me, but 100,000? How do you even... Was every house in that city a bar? Why does the time where alcohol is banned sound so fun? Don't mind me, guys, I'm just gonna head next door to the bar. Which one? The one on our left or the one on our right? Actually, I was just gonna head over the road and go to one of the 4 over there. I want to go through some of the stories from Prohibition because some of them are rather funny. One such story is of Roy Olmstead, who was a Seattle police officer. Like many of the police at the time, they were doing a lot of bootlegging busts. He saw these guys getting caught and thought, these guys are they're just so stupid. Why didn't they just not get caught by the police? So he straight up starts a bootlegging business himself, shipped over the border from Canada, gets caught immediately and fined $500, which if that's not adjusted for inflation is $7,500. He was also kicked out of the police force, which you should for committing a crime. Not to let it get him down, he decided to turn his part-time bootlegging job into a full-time one. Before long, he was making $200,000 a month. How? I don't even think that's been adjusted for inflation, because if not, he was earning $3 million a month. What the fuck? I mean, compared to Jeff Bezos, it's nothing, but still sizable. Another thing about Roy Olmstead is that because he was earning so much money, he started brushing elbows with very high people in society. He had enough money that he bought a mansion for his family and bought the equipment to build a radio station for his own wife. His wife would actually help him out doing his bootlegging business by sending coded messages in stories that she would read out on her radio station. Roy Olmstead was later raided by police very near to the end of Prohibition. He was fined quite a lot and I think he was jailed for a little while. But after Prohibition ended, Freddie Roosevelt pardoned him and he was let go. He later lived kind of just a wholesome life. He became I believe it's called a Christian Scientist or something like that. But whatever it was called, he would often visit prisons, he would read to them and such, and he lived a fairly wholesome wholesome life, died at like 79 or something. But most of the bootleggers lived pretty good lives. One of the most interesting loopholes was pharmaceutical chains. You see, around the 1920s actually saw the end of alcohol being used for medicinal purposes. Alcohol, since its inception, has been used for medicinal purposes, so it's had quite a long run. The thing is, when the 18th Amendment was written up, it never actually stated that pharmaceutical alcohol was banned. And when I say pharmaceutical alcohol, I don't just mean like those bottles of pure ethanol you could get. I mean 50% whiskey you can get from a pharmacy. A doctor would have to write you a prescription for whiskey. You could then go take that bottle of whiskey and you could get it refilled every 10 days. Bootleggers would often use pharmacies as ways to get off their loot. They'd basically give it to these pharmacies and these pharmacies would effectively sell it for them. They were always seen as a joke because doctors would just write you a prescription. There was one doctor who wrote around 400 prescriptions a day for medical whiskey. That is a lot of whiskey. Some doctors would even be paid to hand over prescription pads so people could write their own prescriptions. Some people didn't even bother with prescriptions. You could just walk into these pharmacies and pay the person at the counter for alcohol. One thing I didn't know is in The Great Gatsby, that book and play and film, I'm sure at some point in your school life you've done something with The Great Gatsby. Gatsby mentions how he made his living off a chain of drugstores, which was actually a reference to bootlegging. For my American viewers, you may know of a pharmaceutical chain called Walgreens, which actually took off because of Prohibition. They say that officially it's because of their milkshakes that they sold, but it's because they were bootleggers. Jenny Justo was someone who was known as the Queen of Bootleggers. Now I'm gonna butcher her real name, Vincenza de Guillemot. Now, her entire family was effectively a crime family. Her father was killed in payback for her brother ratting out his bank heist, and because of this, Jenny kind of had to support her family. The way she did this was running her own speakeasy out of her house. I'm pretty sure she brewed her own alcohol in her own still, and she was very, very popular in the town, and she ran a very tight speakeasy. It's rumoured that she turned down advances from some law enforcement officer, and because of this, she got constantly harassed by police, and eventually she was arrested and fined for having an illegal speakeasy. She was in jail for 6 months, and after that, part of the town effectively gave her a parade. They greeted her with flowers and gifts and practically walked her back to her bar, and she just started right up again. Not long after that, she was actually arrested again, but after she was released, she married a Chicago Bears quarterback, and they opened a completely legal bar after Prohibition ended. Very happy story, very wholesome. That was a very wholesome story. Not all of them are wholesome. Some of them have people dying in them. Not all fun. Women had a big role in Prohibition. There were a lot of older women who the police didn't care. They were making moonshine effectively for their local towns. As long as you weren't a big time operator, the police weren't really that interested. Maggie Bailey is someone who started her own moonshine distilling when she was in her 20s. She was a Kentucky woman, she was effectively making it just for her town, and she continued her illegal moonshine business for 90 years. Moonshine is still technically illegal in America. Not all alcohol is legal, but Maggie Bailey loved doing it so much, she just kept doing it. She was regularly harassed by law enforcement, but they really couldn't get anything to stick to her. She only served very few months in prison, I think 18 months in jail for one crime. She was really wholesome as well. During the Great Depression, she would often give people alcohol through credit and allow those people to sell the alcohol themselves and give her just a tiny bit of the cut, just to help out the town. Whenever she would go into court for being arrested for doing this, the town would back her up hugely because everyone loved her, so they could really never justifiably arrest her. She never sold alcohol to children, and she never sold alcohol to people that she knew were having problems with alcohol abuse. She died in 2005 at the age of 101, and said that the excitement of her chosen pastime was what kept her young. And it's so wholesome and wonderful. I love her. Anyway, babes, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little in-depth sort of thing on Prohibition. Wasn't too in-depth, but there were some nice stories. Just kind of wanted to introduce the topic. I am interested in alcohol history. As I said, I don't drink it that much. People always think that, you know, I have some sort of drinking problem, even though those bottles haven't changed in however long I've had them up there. I just really like the whole alcohol industry and the history behind it and where it came from. And I hope you enjoyed kind of going through it with me. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, please give it a comment because it helps out the video the most, and subscribe if you haven't already. I have a Twitter, Instagram and Discord, please give me a follow on those. If you want to help support the channel, I have a Patreon and an OnlyFans. Please treat the OnlyFans as just another support site like Patreon. I do post pictures there sometimes. I haven't really felt motivated is the wrong word. Let's just say I haven't been putting as much effort into the OnlyFans as I should do, and I really do want to go back to it. I just need to find myself. But I will get back to that, I promise you. Thank you both for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time.